There is a moment most people never see coming. The moment she begins to feel something genuine for you, something in the dynamic quietly shifts, and not in the direction you would expect. She does not move closer. She moves away. And that silence, that sudden emotional gap between you, it is not a sign that she is losing interest. It is tension. It is fear. It is the invisible struggle between what she is beginning to feel and everything she is trying to keep safe inside herself. When a woman is only mildly interested, things feel light and effortless. She replies quickly, laughs easily, and moves through the connection without any real weight behind it, because there is nothing at stake, nothing to protect. But the moment her emotions begin to deepen, the moment you shift in her mind from just another person to someone who could actually reach her, everything transforms. Her responses slow down, not because you matter less, but because you matter more than she was prepared for. She turns every message over in her mind before sending it. She notices things you did not even mean to signal. And instead of allowing herself to move toward you, she pulls back. Because pulling back feels far safer than standing exposed. This is the point where most men completely misread what is happening. The assumption is that real attraction should look like consistent closeness, obvious enthusiasm, steady effort. But genuine emotional investment does not move in a straight line. It introduces hesitation. It brings doubt. It makes her question herself in ways she has never had to before. And here is the thing that rarely gets said out loud. A woman who is beginning to fall for you is far more vulnerable than one who is not. Because now there is something real she could lose. Now there is someone who could genuinely hurt her. Now you carry weight in her world. So she creates distance, not as a game, but as a way of measuring the space between you. She wants to see whether you notice, whether you panic, whether your behavior shifts, because how you respond to her absence tells her far more about who you are than how you behave when everything between you is easy. While you are sitting in the confusion of it, wondering why she seems to have cooled, she is watching you carefully. Not your words, but your steadiness. She's asking, without asking, whether you become unsettled when she steps back, whether your texts increase, whether your confidence quietly collapses, or whether you stay exactly who you were, grounded, unhurried, unbothered on the outside. Because the man who remains centered when she creates distance is the man who feels emotionally safe. And safety, more than anything else, is what she is searching for. It would be wrong to call this manipulation. It is not about control over you. It is about self-preservation. She can feel her own emotions accelerating, and it frightens her. She's trying to slow something inside herself that feels like it is moving faster than she can manage. She's trying to hold on to her sense of peace, her sense of self. And the more your presence begins to occupy her thoughts, the more urgently she tries to create breathing room. What looks like distance to you feels like survival to her. This is the paradox that catches most men off guard. The deeper she feels something internally, the further away she may appear externally. And if you do not understand that pattern, you will respond in exactly the wrong way. You will push when stillness is what the moment needs. You will speak when silence would have served you better. You will chase when the most powerful thing you could do is simply remain. But if you can see through it, if you can stay composed while she is quietly battling her own emotions, you become something rare to her. Not just someone she is drawn to, but someone she begins to trust with the parts of herself she does not share openly. And that is where the entire dynamic begins to shift. That change in her energy can feel disorienting. One day, she is open and warm and almost effortless, and the next, she is measured, guarded, like she is deliberately holding something back. Your instinct says something has gone wrong. But what if nothing is wrong at all? What if this is precisely what it looks like when something is finally going right? When a woman starts falling for someone, the experience is not simply excitement, it is exposure. It is the feeling of standing without the armor she has spent years building. And the more she is drawn to you, the more clearly she sees that you now carry the ability to affect her mood, her thoughts, and the stillness of her inner life. That realization alone can make her retreat, because what she wants to preserve is not control over you, but control over herself. She does not want to be the one who feels it first. She does not want to be the one who needs more than she is given. So when those emotions begin to rise, her instinct is not to surrender to them. It is to manage them, to contain them, to find space where she can think clearly again. That space reads as withdrawal to you, but to her it is necessary. And this is exactly where most men stumble without realizing the ground beneath them has shifted. They begin asking questions, they reach for reassurance, they try to understand what changed. But every attempt to force clarity only adds pressure, and pressure is the one thing that dismantles emotional safety. It signals to her that she is being rushed towards something she has not fully worked through yet. So she pulls back even further, not because her feelings are fading, but because she is overwhelmed by them. There is something here that almost no one talks about directly. A woman who is uncertain about you will often move toward you, seeking proof that you are worth her time. But a woman who is genuinely beginning to fall will sometimes move away to reclaim her footing. These are two completely different situations, and the response they require is completely different. When she's unsure, she's waiting for you to demonstrate something. When she's falling, she needs to understand something about herself. And during that process, she is watching the kind of man you are in the quiet, unremarkable moments. She notices if your confidence becomes dependent on her responses. She feels it when your energy shifts from steady to seeking, because that kind of need signals fragility. And fragility tells her that opening up to you would cost her more than she is willing to pay. But when you stay consistent, not in pursuit of her, but in who you are on your own, you communicate something without needing to say it. You tell her that her distance does not shake your foundation, that you are not built around her reactions, that you are still the same person she began feeling something for. And that quiet consistency is what gradually lowers the walls she put up. She is not searching for someone who is perfect. She is searching for someone who is emotionally strong, genuinely present, and capable of holding steady, so that falling for him does not mean losing herself. She creates distance to observe whether you can sit in that uncertainty without fracturing. Because the man who can hold his ground in the silence, who does not spiral, who does not reach, becomes someone she cannot stop thinking about. And this is where it becomes uncomfortable in a different way, because her distance begins working on you. Questions appear that were not there before. You replay conversations, looking for what you might have done wrong. You analyze her tone, her timing, her words, and without meaning to, you begin chasing clarity rather than holding your presence. She feels that shift the moment it happens. When your energy moves from grounded to anxious, from calm to searching, it tells her something she cannot unhear. You are becoming emotionally reactive. And the instant she senses that, her walls do not come down. They go higher. Not because she wants to push you away, but because she is protecting herself from what instability costs. Here is what most men never fully understand. When a woman is falling for someone, she becomes acutely sensitive to his emotional state. Not the things he says, but the energy he radiates. If your confidence begins tracking her behavior, she feels the weight of it. And instead of feeling drawn in, she feels responsible. And that kind of early responsibility is something she will resist almost every time. So she steps back further. And now a loop forms. She distances herself to regain control. You react to that distance. She senses your reaction and creates even more space. And something that was growing quietly and naturally begins to collapse under the weight of pressure. But here is the truth that actually changes the outcome. Her distance is not the problem. How you respond to it That pulling away is a natural part of how she processes emotions that feel unfamiliar, intense, and slightly beyond her ability to contain. When you meet that distance with anxiety, you confirm the fear she was already carrying, that getting closer to you means surrendering her emotional stability. And that is not a risk she will take. So what does the man who genuinely understands this do instead? He does not chase the silence. He does not demand explanations. He does not try to force things back to how they felt before. Instead, he does something that requires far more discipline. He returns to himself. He keeps his focus, his rhythm, his sense of direction. He gives her room without making that room feel like abandonment. And most importantly, he refuses to let her temporary withdrawal become the thing that defines his emotional state. Because he understands something worth holding on to. Attraction is not only built in moments of warmth and ease. It is built in moments of uncertainty, in the moments where she does not quite know where she stands but feels that he is solid regardless of that. That kind of presence creates something rare, curiosity, respect, and eventually the foundation of real trust. Because when she sees that her distance does not break him, does not turn him desperate or needy or reactive, something inside her begins to relax. She starts to feel safe again. And slowly, without any grand announcement, she begins to come back. Not because she was pulled back, because she chose to return. That is the part that is the hardest to sit with. Doing less, in this context, produces more. Not as a strategy or a trick, but as a genuine expression of emotional self-possession, of self-respect, of the understanding that not every moment needs to be filled, fixed, or chased. The man who can remain centered when everything around him feels unsteady becomes the one she cannot stop turning over in her mind. Not because he demanded her attention, but because he never unraveled trying to hold on to it. And this is where the dynamic quietly flips, often without either person fully noticing it. The moment you stop reacting to her distance, the moment you stop reaching for answers and simply return to standing firm in your own emotional world, she begins to feel something she was not expecting. The absence of pressure. And that absence does something significant inside her because she had already prepared for you to lean in harder. She was expecting the message asking what was wrong, the shift in your energy trying to pull her back into closeness. She was braced to defend her space. But when that pressure never arrives, her defenses do not know what to do with themselves. They soften. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, almost without her realizing it. In that quiet, something else begins to grow. Her curiosity about you deepens because you are no longer behaving the way she expected. You are not working to secure her attention. You are not trying to manage the outcome. You are simply steady. And steadiness is genuinely rare. She can feel it even when you are not in direct contact. So she begins to move back toward you, carefully at first. Maybe a message that feels lighter than before. Maybe a check-in with no clear reason. Maybe her energy softening just enough that you catch it. These are small signals, but they matter because they mean she is re-engaging on her own terms without being guided or pressured. This is where patience becomes one of the most valuable things you have. Because if you rush this, if you flood her with attention, the moment she takes a single step closer, you undo everything that created the opening. You bring back exactly the weight she had only just started putting down, and she retreats again. But if you stay grounded, if you meet her energy without overwhelming it, you create something that genuine connection requires: balance. And balance gives attraction the room to breathe. Because real closeness does not grow through intensity alone. It grows through rhythm, through the natural space between moments, through interactions that feel intentional rather than desperate. When she begins to feel that rhythm with you, she starts to trust it. She starts to trust you. Not because of anything you said, but because you did not disrupt the emotional current when everything became uncertain. That is the difference between someone she feels something for and someone she actually chooses. Feeling something is effortless. Choosing someone requires safety. It requires the belief that opening up, allowing herself to go deeper, will not be met with chaos or pressure, or someone whose emotional state is entirely dependent on her behavior. And in every moment she steps back and you do not chase. In every moment she softens and you do not overwhelm her. In every moment you stay composed when things feel unclear. You are answering a question she has never actually voiced out loud. Is this someone I can safely fall for? And everything you are doing is speaking to that question far more clearly than words ever could. So do not rush toward a definition too soon. Do not try to force certainty into a place where emotions are still finding their form. The more naturally you allow this to unfold, the more she will move toward you from a place of genuine desire rather than pressure. And that kind of desire does not fade quickly. It builds quietly, and it builds deep until the distance she once needed begins to disappear. Not because you demanded closeness, but because she no longer feels the need to guard herself against it. There is something even more layered happening beneath all of this, something she will likely never articulate directly, but that you will feel if you are paying attention. When a woman begins to fall for someone, she does not only see who he is in this moment, she begins imagining who he could be in her life going forward. And that vision is powerful, but it is also frightening because the moment she sees real potential, she also sees real risk. She begins asking questions she was never forced to ask before. What happens if I get attached and this changes? What if he is not who I believe him to be? What if I lose myself in this? And those questions do not come purely from doubt about you. They come from her history, her past experiences, the parts of her that learned, often painfully, not to trust too quickly. So even while she is being pulled toward you, even while part of her wants nothing more than to move closer, another part is quietly pulling back, reminding her to slow down, to stay grounded, to keep her emotions from running ahead of her judgment. That internal conflict is what produces the mixed signals, the warmth followed by distance, the moments where she feels completely present and then suddenly just out of reach. And if you do not understand what is driving it, you will make it about you. You will assume she is losing interest or that something you did pushed her away. But what is actually happening is far more layered. She is trying to verify for herself that what she feels is real. Because attraction can arrive instantly, chemistry can exist without effort. But trust is built slowly. And when she begins to sense that what she feels for you is moving beyond surface-level interest, she becomes careful in a way she was not before. She pays attention not just to how you treat her, but to how you exist in your own life. How you handle difficulty, how you respond when things do not go as expected. Whether your actions align with your words over time. Whether your presence feels like something she can count on or something that shifts with circumstances. Because she is not simply deciding whether she likes you. She is deciding whether she can rely on you. And that decision does not happen in dramatic moments. It happens in the small, overlooked, unremarkable ones. This is exactly why trying to impress her at this stage tends to backfire. Grand gestures, constant attention, over-explaining how you feel, none of it creates the security she is actually looking for. In fact, it can create the opposite effect, making everything feel rushed, unstable, and emotionally heavy. What she needs instead is not intensity, it is consistency. She needs to feel that who you are today will still be who you are tomorrow. That your energy does not rise and fall based on where she is emotionally. That you are moving through your own life with direction independent of her reactions. And when she begins to feel that, something inside her changes. The fear begins to quiet. The urge to pull away becomes less insistent. Because getting closer to you no longer feels like giving something up. It begins to feel like gaining something solid. That is when her distance fades. Not all at once, not with a grand shift, but in the small ways that matter most. She becomes more present, more open, more willing to let you see the parts of herself she was holding carefully out of view, but only because you did not force her there, only because you let her find her own way to that place. And that is what makes it real, because anything that develops under pressure can always be questioned later. But what someone chooses freely, what she builds toward without being pushed, that is what she trusts. And once she trusts it, she stops running from it. This is the stage most never reach, not because it was beyond them, but because they ran out of patience before it arrived. And when it does arrive, something almost surreal happens. The same woman who once kept you at arm's length, who seemed just slightly out of reach, begins to lean in, not cautiously, but willingly. Her energy becomes warmer and more consistent. And what you notice is not just her attention, it is her openness. She begins letting you see her, not the carefully curated version she presents to the world, but the real one. The one who feels things deeply, thinks about everything, and does not let people in without reason. She shares more. She listens differently. She invests in the connection in ways that feel organic rather than calculated. And the most important part of all of it is this: she does it because she chose to, not because you convinced her, not because you wore her down, but because in every moment she expected pressure, you gave her room. In every moment she expected instability, you were steady. In every moment she tested the distance between you, you did not lose yourself trying to close it. That consistency built something that goes deeper than attraction. It built trust, and trust is what turns a moment of chemistry into something that actually lasts. But even here, even at this point, there is one final place where things can quietly unravel. Some men relax in a way that is not healthy, not the natural ease of comfort, but a kind of slow abandonment of the very qualities that made her feel safe in the first place. They stop leading their own life with intention. They begin placing everything around her presence, and gradually the balance tips again. Because the emotional strength that drew her close is the same strength that must be sustained if the connection is going to continue growing. This does not mean keeping distance. It does not mean holding anything back. It means remembering who you were before you needed her validation. Because she did not begin to fall for you when you were chasing her. She fell for you when you were fully in possession of yourself, when your life had its own direction, when your energy felt whole, not dependent on what she gave back. That is the version of you she came toward. That is the version of you she trusted. So if you want what is growing between you to last, you do not need to transform into someone new. You need to protect who you already were. Keep your standards, keep your rhythm, keep your sense of self fully intact no matter how close she gets. Because real attraction does not deepen by holding on tighter. It deepens by staying grounded while everything around you grows. And when you truly live from that place, something shifts that you did not have to force. She stops questioning the connection. She stops manufacturing distance. She stops fighting what she feels. Because being close to you no longer carries risk. It carries the feeling of coming home. So before you move on from this, sit with one honest question. When she pulled back, did you become someone she could trust or someone who needed her to stay close? Let that land. And if any of this reached something you have been quietly carrying, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes the silence between two people is not the end of something. It is the beginning of everything.